So you mentioned that you were a believer at some point. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah,
if you're comfortable, obviously. Just
yeah, absolutely. No, I absolutely am. Yeah, so I think I grew up like kind of Christian. Like I had a Christian upbringing, read the Bible and stuff. We attended church off and on, but I kind of fell away from all of that. In my teenage years. But then when I was 16, and I had a bunch of people invite me to a youth group, and I went along, and it was a Pentecostal youth group, and I had a really tremendous spiritual experience. Like I had people praying for me, and so I didn't want to be prayed for, and I was like crouching over, and they came and prayed for me anyway, and they were prophesying and telling me stuff that they couldn't have known, or I thought they couldn't have known at the time.
Oh.
And they were saying like, I know that you feel like XYZ, but God wants you to know that, A, B, C, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it hit. And I remember just looking down, and I just saw like a puddle of tears. And and then I felt like almost intoxicated for about 2 days. Like I felt drunk. And when I came back to school on Monday, there was such a shift in my personality. I went from being like this depressed kid at school to people calling me Captain Christian, because I ended up being this like real happy, positive person. I was running Bible studies at school. I was so into the religion. And the more and more I pushed into, the more and more I wanted to understand this thing, the more and more I got involved in the local church and the youth ministry. And I eventually became the youth pastor of that church. So I was overseeing like, sometimes we'd have 115 youth come on a Friday night, and we'd preach and, do laying on of hands and speaking in tongues and all that stuff. And and that was kind of my Christian journey. But I was a Christian for a while, but then I eventually lost that job as a youth pastor. I was unordained, so I didn't go through the youth ceremonies or anything to be ordained, but I was in the role of youth pastor. And eventually I kind of went through a really hard time in life when I lost the job as a youth pastor. I started getting involved in I started getting really depressed. I was introduced to weed. I started smoking a little bit of weed, and then I eventually found myself in this situation where I was in a really dark and miserable place, and eventually I pulled myself out of it. I met the lovely wife that I have now. We were committed Christians. The first time we slept together was on our wedding night. Like, we were really committed. We moved in together the first time when we were married. But then through the process of this one, like, I'm sorry, this is a long ass story, but
dude, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this I think it might have been, I can't remember what it was, but I had a few conversations with people about evolution, and I wanted to understand it better because I knew it was wrong, and I wanted to understand it better. So I remember like getting a bit conflicted internally about the scientific realm, and I was really interested in science and my beliefs. So I remember one day deciding that I was going to create this document called The Objective Truth of Origins, and I was going to try and look at every little realm of evidence, and I'm going to look at it honestly. And that's when I come to the realization that even though I was a Christian, I had to approach the information as if I wasn't, and it was okay to do that because I believe that it was okay to do that because it would lead me to God anyway, because God was 100% true. And it was okay to take off like my God glasses, look at the evidence, and then put them back on. And I remember actually doing that. I remember going, okay, I'm going to look at this video. I'm going to try and remove all my presuppositions. I remove them. I watched the video, or I read the paper, or something. And I was like, okay. And then I put my glasses on at the end, like my Christianity back on. And I was like, okay, that was interesting. I noticed something I wouldn't normally have noticed. And I started noticing little cracks, and then those cracks became bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually I'm in like this giant canyon, and I'm going, how did I not notice this huge gaping hole? And that became really internally hard to deal with. So I started reaching out to a lot of Christians, my Christian friends, and I noticed that they not only didn't want to talk about it, but when they did talk about it, they were extremely dishonest. Like they were like absolutely the opposite of like how I was trying to approach things. They would lie to themselves or to me. They would misrepresent data. They, and that started me on a long journey to evaluate my faith and science and trying to marry my perspectives. And eventually I came to the conclusion that eventually I came to the conclusion that there was no way for me to justify my belief anymore. And although I had these internal feelings of love and I still felt this warm feeling when I read the Bible, or even though I had these incredible spiritual experiences, I could no longer attach a truth claim to them and be logically consistent. And it wasn't something I could walk back on either. It was like once I dipped my toes in there, it's not like I could change anything. I would just be lying to myself. I'd be going back in the closet per se and just pretending like I didn't see that stuff. So that's kind of what my journey was.
Fuck me. David, that was awesome. I have often said, I've been an atheist my whole life. Like I just, I've never had to do that. I've never had to do that work. And I've often really wondered whether I would be able to, like really genuinely, like I can empathize with how hard that must be. And to do that, just sort of to roll it back to base principles as you did and just say, look, I need to look at this and, still with that confidence of that it would lead to God, and to do that work is incredibly impressive. That is an amazing story.
It was like incredibly heartbreaking, but it was also extraordinarily exciting because when I would be like figuring things out, it was like landing on an alien planet and like having to relearn everything. Like, wait, so I don't have to make up some justification about these dinosaur fossils. I can like buy one if I want, and it's probably as old as they say it is. And I'm like, whoa, like, or like when I'd learn something new about evolution or something, I'd be blown away. And like the more I learn about science and stuff, it just was really exciting. Yeah.
One question I neglected to ask, which was, and feel free if it's not, if you're not comfortable saying, but did your wife also, is she still a Christian, or did she also follow you?
This is an interesting bit of an interesting story. I don't know how like if I can go on another little bit of a.
You are welcome to take all the time you like.
Okay. So when I first started looking into all of this, I sat down with Amy. My wife's name's Amy, and I said, she's not interested. Like she doesn't really care. She was a committed believer and stuff, but she wasn't. It didn't really inform her day-to-day choices like as much, like her lack of belief or belief. She kind of has this amazing ability not to care that much and just go, yeah, like, and I'm like, oh, like, which is crazy to me. Anyway, I sat down with her and I said, hey, I'd love to be able to share this journey with you, not away from faith, but this journey into, at the time, like this investigation into science and into like looking at our beliefs and stuff. And I said, I don't need you to do anything, but I just need you to be open when I'm telling you about something that I'm noticing. And she said, yeah, well, let's do it then. I'm totally happy to listen to what you've discovered and watch things or whatever and reason with you. And she got really good at, she actually got really, really, really good at building like formal logic and arguments and stuff. And in arguments, she would correct me if I'm being too emotional. She'd be like, no, you're incorrect. This is why you're incorrect. And here's the premise, conclusion. You're wrong in this premise. And I'm like, all right, you've gone way over deep, and this is great. Oh. Like, so it sometimes resolves arguments a lot easier. But anyway, in that process, she decided to buy me tickets to, I think it was the 2016 Brisbane. Brisbane's a city near where I live. Faith and Science talk with at the Science Festival, at the World Science Festival. and we'd never been before. And she bought these tickets, and we decided to go down. And on stage it was a big talk, and on stage there was a Buddhist, a Muslim, some sort of an Orthodox Christian, a Catholic, and maybe a Hindu and an atheist. And they were all scientists or philosophers, and all of them.
That sounds like the beginning of an elaborate joke, doesn't it?
Yeah. And they were all saying that faith had no problem working with science, like had no issue in dealing with with science, and that they could still have their faith and practice their faith, even though they're all mutually exclusive faith, which was interesting. And I was sitting there watching it going, okay. And there's only one person who disagreed, and that was A.C. Grayling, who was there.
Really?
And and he said, wow. He goes, like, he went through all the religious people, and he said, with this question, can faith and science mix? And he said something along the lines of, well, I know now that I was just brought here to disagree with everyone because I disagree. And everyone in the room laughed, and he said for him, faith is the antithesis to science. Like with faith, you start with a presupposition. With science, you've got to remove as much as you possibly can, or build on things that can be questioned. But anyway, so there was an interesting conversation. He's the only one I really agreed with, and that's the only part I really remember. But afterwards, he was the only one popular enough to have a book signing. And Amy went to the toilet, and I was looking at his books, and I saw one called The God Argument. And I went and picked it up, and I just saw the word God, and I was like, and it's a book on secular humanism. It had nothing to do with anything that I was thinking it was. And I decided to go get it signed, and it felt like some profound form of blasphemy to go get this atheist author to sign this book. Like, I didn't even listen to non-Christian music a lot of the time, only years prior. So I walk up to him and waited in line, and Amy came with me, and I said, hey, and I gave him the book, and I was nervous, and I was like kind of panicking a little bit, and I had a little bit of an anxiety disorder at the time. Well, I still kind of do, but it was manifest a lot worse back then. And I said, just so you know, I was a Christian. I was actually in ministry. I was a youth pastor, and now I'm questioning my faith and stuff. He stopped the signing straight away, and he looked up at me, and like, because it was just like, go, like with like signing or whatever. But with me, he stopped, and he looked at me, and he said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, well, it's it's really hard, and but I understand that and then he goes, how are you going emotionally?" And I was like, "Oh, blah, blah, blah." And then he was like asking questions, and he goes, I take my hat off to you. Not many people can do this, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is a good thing. And wherever you end up, I implore you for taking this journey. And then I said, "Oh, okay." And I was like taken aback, and I said, "Well, I'll read your book, and I'll let you know what I think." And he goes, "Sure." And he opens the back of it and writes his personal email in it. It was like a .net or .yahoo or something. Like, it was old school email, so he's had it for a while. And I was like, "Whoa!" We got a photo with him, and as we walked back out of he looks like Doc Brown is crazy. He's got the white hair, and we're saying
he's a cool guy.
Yeah. And we're walking down the stairs, and Amy just said to me, she goes, I remember she said the words, "I think what you're doing is good." And I remember those words hit me like a ton of bricks. And she's like, "I think it's important to investigate what we believe and why. And I think what you're doing is good." And then me and her sat there and spoke about beliefs for like really openly. Like, for me, it felt like a moment where Amy kind of understood the gravity of the situation and understood that we were on the right side of, I guess, we're on the right side in that we're questioning what we believe. And since then, I don't know if Amy would call herself what Amy would call herself per se, but in general, I think she subscribes to many of the same beliefs. And we go back and forth on certain things, but she's definitely not a fundamentalist Christian anymore.